Qin Shi Huang, or Qin Shi Huangdi, meaning the first emperor of Qin, was the founder of the Qin dynasty and the first emperor of China. He was born Ying Zheng as Zhao Zheng, a prince of the state of Qin. He became the King Zheng of Qin when he was 13, then China's first emperor when he was 38 after the Qin had conquered all of the other warring states and unified all of China in 221 BC. Rather than maintain the title of king, borne by the previous Shang and Zhou rulers, he ruled as the first emperor of the Qin dynasty from 220 to 210 BC. His self-invented title, emperor, as indicated by his use of the word first, would continue to be borne by Chinese rulers for the next 2 millennia. During his reign, his generals greatly expanded the size of the Chinese state. Campaigns south of Chu permanently added the Yu lands of Hunan and Guangdong to the Chinese cultural orbit. Campaigns in Central Asia conquered the Ordos loop from the nomad Zhormu, although eventually it would also lead to the Confederation under Modu Chani. Qin Shi Huang also worked with his minister Li Si to enact major economic and political reforms aimed at the standardization of the diverse practices of the earlier Chinese states. He is traditionally said to have banned and burned many books and executed scholars. His public works projects included the unification of diverse state walls into a single Great Wall of China and a massive new national road system, as well as the city-sized mausoleum guarded by the life-size terracotta army. He ruled until his death in 210 BC after a futile search for an elixir of immortality. Names and titles. Modern Chinese sources often give the personal name of Qin Shi Huang as Ying Zheng, with Ying taken as the surname and Zheng the given name. In ancient China, however, the naming convention differed, and Zhao may be used as the surname. Unlike modern Chinese names, the nobles of ancient China had 2 distinct surnames. The ancestral name comprised a larger group descended from a prominent ancestor, usually said to have lived during the time of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of Chinese legend, and the clan name comprised a smaller group that showed a branch's current fief or recent title. The ancient practice was to list men's names separately. In Sima Qian's Basic Annals of the First Emperor of Qin introduces him as given the name Zheng and the surname Zhao, or to combine the clan surname with the personal name. Sima's account of Chu describes the 16th year of the reign of King He as the time when Zhao Zheng was enthroned as King of Qin. However, since modern Chinese surnames use the same character as the old ancestral names, it is much more common in modern Chinese sources to see the emperor's personal name written as Ying Zheng, using the ancestral name of the Ying family. The rulers of Qin had styled themselves kings from the time of King Hui in 325 BC. Upon his ascension, Zheng became known as the King of Qin, or King Zheng of Qin. This title made him the nominal equal of the rulers of Shang and of Zhou, the last of whose kings had been deposed by King Zhao Zheng of Qin in 256 BC. Following the surrender of Qi in 221 BC, King Zheng had reunited all of the lands of the former kingdom of Zhou. Rather than maintain his rank as king, however, he created a new title of Huangdi for himself. This new title combined 2 titles, Huang of the mythical 3 sovereigns and the Dai of the legendary 5 emperors of Chinese prehistory. The title was intended to appropriate some of the prestige of the Yellow Emperor, whose cult was popular in the later Warring States period and who was considered to be a founder of the Chinese people. King Zheng chose the new regnal name of First Emperor on the understanding that his successors would be successively titled the Second Emperor, Third Emperor, and so on through the generations. The new title carried religious overtones. For that reason, sinologists, starting with Peter Budberg or Edward Schaeffer, sometimes translate it as Thirch, and the first emperor as the first Thirch. The first emperor intended that his realm would remain intact through the ages, but, following its overthrow and replacement by Han after his death, it became customary to prefix his title with Qin. Thus, Qin of Qin, Shi first, Huangdi Huangdi, emperor, a new term coined from Huang, literally shining or splendid, and formerly most usually applied as an epithet of heaven, the high god of the Zhou, deity, the high god of the Shang, possibly composed of the divine ancestors, and used by the Zhou as a title of the legendary five emperors, particularly the Yellow Emperor. As early as Sima Qian, it was common to shorten the resulting four-character Qin Shi Huangdi to, variously transcribed as Qin Shi Huang or Qin Shi Huang. Following his elevation as emperor, both Shang's personal name and possibly its homophone became taboo. The first emperor also arrogated the first-person Chinese pronoun for his exclusive use, and in 212 BC began calling himself the Immortal. Others were to address him as Your Majesty in person and Your Highness in writing. Birth and parentage. According to the records of the head historian written by Sima Qian during the Han dynasty, the first emperor was the eldest son of the Qin Prince Yiren, who later became King Zheng of Qin. Prince Yiren at the time was residing at the court of Zhao, serving as a hostage to guarantee the armistice between the Qin and Zhao states. Prince Yiren had fallen in love at first sight with a concubine of Lu Bavai, a rich merchant from the state of Wei. Lu consented for her to be Yiren's wife, who then became known as Lady Zhao after the state of Zhao. Lady Zhao gave birth to the child on the 18th of February, and he was given the name Zhao Zheng. The name Zheng came from his month of birth Shangyu, the first month of the Chinese lunar calendar. The clan name of Zhao came from his father's lineage and was unrelated to either his mother's name or the location of his birth. Lu Bavai's machinations would later help Yiren become King Zheng of Qin in 250 BC. However, the records of the Grand Historian also claimed that the first emperor was not the actual son of Prince Yiren but that of Lu Bavai. According to this account, when Lu Bavai introduced the dancing girl to the prince, she was Lu Bavai's concubine and had already become pregnant by him, and the baby was born after an unusually long period of pregnancy. According to translations of the annals of Lu Bavai, Zhao gave birth to the future emperor in the city of Handan in 259 BC, the first month of the 48th year of King Zheng of Qin. The idea that the emperor was an illegitimate child, widely believed throughout Chinese history, contributed to the generally negative view of the first emperor. However, a number of modern scholars have doubted this account of his birth. Sinologist Dirk Bod wrote, "There is good reason for believing that the sentence describing this unusual pregnancy is an interpolation added to the Shikai by an unknown person in order to slander the first emperor and indicate his political as well as natal illegitimacy." John Knobloch and Geoffrey Regal, in the translation of Lu Bavai's Spring and Autumn Annals, call the story patently false, meant both to libel Lu and to cast aspersions on the first emperor, claiming Lu Bavai, a merchant, as the first emperor's biological father was meant to be especially disparaging, since late Confucian society regarded merchants as the lowest of all social classes. As the king of Qin, regency in 246 BC, when King Shi died after a short reign of just 3 years. He was succeeded on the throne by his 13-year-old son. At the time, Zhao Zheng was still young, so Liu Bavai acted as the regent prime minister of the state of Qin, which was still waging war against the other 6 states. Zhao Changjiao, the Lord Chang'an, was Zhao Zheng's legitimate half-brother, by the same father but from a different mother. After Zhao Zheng inherited the throne, Changjiao rebelled at Tunliu and surrendered to the state of Zhao. Changjiao's remaining retainers and families were executed by Zhao Zheng. Lao Ai's attempted coup. As King Zheng grew older, Liu Bavai became fearful that the boy king would discover his liaison with his mother Lady Zhao. He decided to distance himself and look for a replacement for the Queen Dowager. He found a man named Lao Ai. According to the record of Grand Historian, Lao Ai was disguised as a eunuch by plucking his beard. Later Lao Ai and Queen Zhaoji got along so well they secretly had 2 sons together. Lao Ai then became ennobled as Marquis Lao An and was showered with riches. Lao Ai's plot was supposed to replace King Zheng with one of the hidden sons. But during a dinner party, drunken Lao Ai was heard bragging about being the young king's stepfather. In 238 BC, the king was traveling to the ancient capital of Yong. Lao Ai seized the queen mother's seal and mobilized an army in an attempt to start a coup and rebel. When King Zheng found out this fact, he ordered Liu Bavai to let Lord Changping and Lord Changwan attack Lao Ai, and their army killed hundreds of the rebels at the capital. Although Lao Ai succeeded in fleeing from this battle, a price of 1 million copper coins was placed on Lao Ai's head if he was taken alive, 500,000 if dead. Lao Ai's supporters were captured and beheaded. Then Lao Ai was tied up and torn to 5 pieces by horse carriages, while his entire family was executed to the 3rd degree. The 2 hidden sons were also killed, while Mother Zhaoji was placed under house arrest until her death many years later. Liu Bavai drank a cup of poison wine and committed suicide in 235 BC. Ying Zheng then assumed full power as the king of the Qin state. Replacing Liu Bavai, Li Si became the new chancellor. First attempted assassination. King Zheng and his troops continued to take over different states. The state of Yan was small, weak and frequently harassed by soldiers. It was no match for the Qin state, so Crown Prince Dan of Yan plotted an assassination attempt to get rid of King Zheng, begging Qin.He to go on the mission in 227 BC. Qin.He was accompanied by Qin Wuyang in the plot. Each was supposed to present a gift to King Zheng, a map of Dokang and a decapitated head of Fan Wuji. Qin Wuyang first tried to present the map case gift but trembled in fear and moved no further towards the king. Qin.He continued to advance toward the king, while explaining that his partner has never set eyes on the Son of Heaven, which is why he is trembling. Qin.He had to present both gifts by himself. While unrolling the map, a dagger was revealed. The king drew back, stood on his feet, but struggled to draw the sword to defend himself. At the time, other palace officials were not allowed to carry weapons. Qin.He pursued the king, attempting to stab him, but missed. King Zheng drew out his sword and cut Qin.He's thigh. Qin.He then threw the dagger, but missed again. Suffering 8 wounds from the king's sword, Qin.He realized his attempt had failed and knew that both of them would be killed afterwards. The Yan state was conquered by the Qin state 5 years later. Second attempted assassination. Gao Jianli was a close friend of Qin.He, who wanted to avenge his death. As a famous lute player, one day he was summoned by King Zheng to play the instrument. Someone in the palace who had known him in the past exclaimed, "This is Gao Jianli." Unable to bring himself to kill such a skilled musician, the emperor ordered his eyes put out, but the king allowed Gao Jianli to play in his presence. He praised the playing and even allowed Gao Jianli to get closer. As part of the plot, the lute was fastened with a heavy piece of lead. He raised the lute and struck at the king. He missed, and his assassination attempt failed. Gao Jianli was later executed. Unification of China in 230 BC. King Zheng unleashed the final campaigns of the Warring States period, setting out to conquer the remaining independent kingdoms, one by one. The first state to fall was Han in 230 BC. Then Qin took advantage of natural disasters in 229 BC to invade and conquer Zhao, where Qin Shi Huang had been born. He now avenged his poor treatment as a child hostage there, seeking out and killing his enemies. Qin armies conquered the state of Zhao in 228 BC, the northern country of Yan in 226 BC, the small state of Wei in 225 BC, and the largest state and greatest challenge, Chu, in 223 BC. In 222 BC, the last remnants of Yan and the royal family were captured in Liaodong in the northeast. The only independent country left was now state of Qi, in the far east, what is now the Shandong Peninsula. Terrified, the young king of Qi sent 200,000 people to defend his western borders. In 221 BC, the Qin armies invaded from the north, captured the king, and annexed Qin. Some of the strategies Qin used to unify China was to standardize the trade and communication, currency and language. For the first time, all of China was unified under one powerful ruler. In that same year, King Zheng proclaimed himself the first emperor, no longer a king in the old sense and now far surpassing the achievements of the old Zhou dynasty rulers. The emperor made the He Shi Bai into the imperial seal, known as the Heirloom seal of the realm. The words, "having received the mandate from heaven, may lead a long and prosperous life," were written by Prime Minister Li Si, and carved onto the seal by Sun Shou. The seal was later passed from emperor to emperor for generations to come. In the south, military expansion in the form of campaigns against the Yu tribes continued during his reign, with various regions being annexed to what is now Guangdong province and part of today's Vietnam. As the Emperor of Qin, administrative reforms in an attempt to avoid a recurrence of the political chaos of the Warring States period. Qin Shi Huang and his Prime Minister Li Si completely abolished feudalism. The empire was then divided into 36 commanderies, later more than 40 commanderies. The whole of China was thus divided into administrative units, first commanderies, then districts, counties and hundred family units. This system was different from the previous dynasties, which had loose alliances and federations. People could no longer be identified by the native region of former feudal state, as when a person from Chu was called Chu person. Appointments were subsequently based on merit instead of hereditary rights. Economic reforms. Qin Shi Huang and Li Si unified China economically by standardizing the Chinese units of measurement such as weights and measures, the currency, and the length of the axles of carts to facilitate transport on the road system. The emperor also developed an extensive network of roads and canals connecting the provinces to improve trade between them. The currency of the different states were also standardized to the Banliang coin. Perhaps most importantly, the Chinese script was unified. Under Li Si, the seal script of the state of Qin was standardized through removal of variant forms within the Qin script itself. This newly standardized script was then made official throughout all the conquered regions, thus doing away with all the regional scripts to form one language, one communication system for all of China. Philosophy. Qin Shi Huang Huang also followed the school of the five elements: earth, wood, metal, fire and water. Zhao Zheng's birth element is water, which is connected with the color black. It was also believed that the royal house of the previous dynasty Zhou had ruled by the power of fire, which was the color red. The new Qin dynasty must be ruled by the next element on the list, which is water, represented by the color black. Black became the color for garments, flags, pennants. Other associations include north as the cardinal direction, winter season and the number 6. Tallies and official hats were 6 inches long, carriages 6 feet wide, one pace was 6 feet. While the previous Warring States era was one of constant warfare, it was also considered the golden age of free thought. Qin Shi Huang eliminated the 100 schools of thought which incorporated Confucianism and other philosophies. After the unification of China, with all other schools of thought banned, legalism became the endorsed ideology of the Qin dynasty, which was basically a system that required the people to follow the laws or be punished accordingly. Beginning in 213 BC, at the instigation of Li Si to avoid scholars' comparisons of his reign with the past, Qin Shi Huang ordered most existing books to be burned with the exception of those on astrology, agriculture, medicine, divination, and the history of the state of Qin. This would also serve the purpose of furthering the ongoing reformation of the writing system by removing examples of obsolete scripts. Owning the Book of Songs of the Classic of History was to be punished especially severely, according to the later records of the Grand Historian. The following year, Qin Shi Huang had some 460 scholars buried alive for owning the forbidden books. The emperor's oldest son Fuzu criticized him for this act. Recent research suggests that the burying of the Confucian scholars alive is a Confucian martyr's legend. Rather, the emperor ordered the killing of a group of alchemists after having found that they had fooled him. In Han times, the Confucian scholars, who had served the Qin loyally, used that incident to distance themselves from the failed dynasty. Kong Anguo, a descendant of Confucius, turned the alchemists into Confucianists and entwined the martyrs' legend with the strange story of the rediscovery of the lost Confucian books, behind a demolished wall in the house of his ancestors. The emperor's own library still had copies of the forbidden books, but most of these were destroyed later when Xiangyu burned the palaces of Zhanyang in 206 BC. Third attempted assassination in 230 BC. The state of Qin had defeated the state of Han. A Han aristocrat named Zhang Liang swore revenge on the Qin emperor. He sold all his valuables and in 218 BC, he hired a strongman assassin and built him a heavy metal cone weighing 120 jin. The two men hid among the bushes along the emperor's route over a mountain. Out of signal, the muscular assassin hurled the cone at the first carriage and shattered it. However, the emperor was actually in the second carriage, as he was traveling with two identical carriages for this very reason. Thus the attempt failed. Both men were able to escape in spite of a huge manhunt. Public Works Great Wall. The Qin fought nomadic tribes to the north and northwest. The Xiongnu tribes were not defeated and subdued. Thus the campaign was tiring and unsuccessful. And to prevent the Xiongnu from encroaching on the northern frontier any longer, the emperor ordered the construction of an immense defensive wall. This wall, for whose construction hundreds of thousands of men were mobilized, and an unknown number died, is a precursor to the current Great Wall of China. It connected numerous state walls which had been built during the previous 4 centuries, a network of small walls linking river defenses to impassable cliffs. Link Canal. A famous South China quotation was, "In the north there is the Great Wall, in the south there is the Link Canal." In 214 BC, the emperor began the project of a major canal to transport supplies to the army. The canal allows water transport between North and South China. The canal, 34 kilometers in length, links the Xiang River, which flows into the Yangtze, and the Lijiang, which flows into the Pearl River. The canal connected two of China's major waterways and aided Qin's expansion into the southwest. The construction is considered one of the three great feats of ancient Chinese engineering, the others being the Great Wall and the Sichuan-Duzhangyun irrigation system. Elixir of Life. Later in his life, Qin Shi Huang feared death and desperately sought the fabled Elixir of Life, which would supposedly allow him to live forever. He was obsessed with acquiring immortality and fell prey to many who offered him supposed elixirs. He visited Shifu Island 3 times in order to achieve immortality. In one case he sent Zufu, a Shifu Islander, with ships carrying hundreds of young men and women in search of the mystical Penglai mountain. They were sent to find Anqi Sheng, a 1,000-year-old magician whom Qin Shi Huang had supposedly met in his travels and who had invited him to seek him there. These people never returned, perhaps because they knew that if they returned without the promised elixir, they would surely be executed. Legends claim that they reached Japan and colonized it. It is also possible that the book Burning, a purge on what could be seen as wasteful and useless literature, was, in part, an attempt to focus the minds of the emperor's best scholars on the alchemical quest. Some of the executed scholars were those who had been unable to offer any evidence of the supernatural schemes. This may have been the ultimate means of testing their abilities. If any of them had magic powers, then they would surely come back to life when they were let out again. Since the great emperor was afraid of death and evil spirits, he had workers build a series of tunnels and passageways to each of his palaces, because traveling unseen would supposedly keep him safe from the evil spirits.